official clock says at 6 p.m. I'd like to welcome everyone to the regularly scheduled June 2023 Metropolitan Area Planning Commission meeting. First item is to call roll.
Colry.
Here.
Walker Henson. Jacob Crumweed. David Trojan.
Here.
Brian Henry.
Here.
Greg Hobb.
Here.
Donald Roberts.
Here.
Marvin Cusick. Troy Lippard. Clarence Malley.
Here.
Scott Orr.
Here.
Okay. Second item is to consider approval of the minutes from our May 2023 meeting. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding that?
Make a motion to approve the
I
minutes.
have a motion to approve, and I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
David. Items 3.1, zoning. Hold a public hearing and consider approval of a request to rezone the property located on East Chestnut Street between North 30th Street, Highway 64, and 42nd Street from Agricultural General District to C3 General Commercial District, and make a recommendation to the Mayor and Board of Commissioners. Alex?
Yes, Honorable Chairs, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. The request before you is a public hearing item. It's a rezone request from Questus Corporation. They've acquired the site, which is approximately 3.6 acres located on East Chestnut between North 30th, Highway 64, and 42nd Street. As you can see, the site is bifurcated by there's a larger section there to the southwest. It was cut off in the early 1900s by when they ran the BNSF line through there. The site is currently zoned as agriculture, which has a 5-acre minimum site size. At 3.6, this would be non-conforming for ag. The request is to rezone the property to C3 General Commercial. There is a precedent for that in that the site across the street from it is also zoned C3, and there's a smattering of industrial zones in the area to the northwest and southeast. There's water service at the site. However, no sewer is easily accessible within even a quarter mile from this site, so the applicant has indicated they would do private sewer service. The plan by the applicant, if this rezone is successful, is to build 3 metal buildings. Staff supports the request for C3 and believes that it's the highest and best use considering the factors that have been set forth in the report. We do recommend approval of the zone change. And as I said, this is a public hearing item. Thank you.
Any questions, comments?
I move the approval. Second.
I have a motion from David and a second from Brian. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There are none. Item 3.2, zoning. Hold a public hearing on an ordinance amending the Enid Municipal Code 2014, Title 11, Chapter 1, Purpose, Interpretation, Definitions, to add a definition for medical marijuana processor and amending Chapter 11 Supplemental Zones, Article C, ETS Enid Town Square Overlay District, Section 1110C5, Prohibited Uses, to prohibit new medical marijuana dispensaries, commercial growers, and processors within the ETS Overlay District, and make a recommendation to the Mayor and Board of Commissioners. Alex?
Commission, this is a draft ordinance before you, which will, if with your recommendation, will be sent on to the Commission on July 6th for adoption. This is a public hearing item, so once I present, feel free to ask me any questions, and then you can invite any folks present here to, if they have anything to add or to this or express any questions or concerns. Basically, this amends the text of the Enid Town Square Overlay Zone in the majority of our downtown. It does add a definition to medical marijuana processor as a business that produces, manufactures, extracts, processes, packages, or concentrates, or creates concentrates, medical marijuana infused products or medical marijuana products. It also adds medical marijuana dispensaries, commercial growers, and processors as prohibited uses within the ETS going forward. So by going forward, I mean this would go to the commission upon your recommendation on July 6th, and if it's adopted by the mayor and board of commissioners on the 6th, it would go into effect 30 days afterwards. Staff does believe that this change is necessary, and it's in keeping with the intent of the Enid Town Square, which is to promote a range of businesses that are family-friendly and are destination-oriented. So what we're proposing here would be in keeping with the original intent of the Enid Town Square.
Carol and I had a short discussion before the meeting as to the insert, which would appear on page 16, K being added language. And Carol, you're the legal.
To take out, he mentioned that it could be construed that only commercial growers and processor, they have separate licenses, but or doesn't hurt. I mean, so I think or makes it clear. It was intended that a dispensary, a commercial grower, it does not need to be a commercial grower that also has a processor's license. So I will make that change when we present it to the Mayor and Board of Commissioners.
So we don't need to make a formal motion to strike the and insert or. You'll take care of that prior to
Yes.
presentation.
Yes, I will.
This
You could
concludes.
make a motion
Wow.
that it's or, but I don't
So
think
moved.
that's
I mean, if it's
necessary.
not necessary, don't.
We'll get it.
If you're,
Just not Scott Orr, right?
Right.
Our current businesses that are operating there now, are they, I'm assuming they're going to be grandfathered in?
Yes, that is correct. This will not impact existing licensed facilities. As I said, it's going forward, which would be 30 days after the adoption by the mayor and board of commissioners, if that were to take place.
And anybody that's in the middle of, let's say, a move or a license transference to another entity or so on and so forth, does that affect them at all?
No, it wouldn't. They're still subject to inspection and an issuance of a certificate of occupancy.
Okay.
so Carol, I might inquire, grower versus commercial grower.
Okay,
Let's talk about that also in the,
okay. This does not, the patients or the caregivers who can grow 6 plants, they still grow 6 plants. They can still grow 6 plants if they happen to have a house in the ETS, because it's not a commercial establishment. And that is not, we're not saying that someone who's living there can't grow the 6 plants.
but does that require a residential environment or some commercial entity that has 100 people that come in? Could they grow 6 plants each?
No, it's just for the individual, and there's special rules about the individual patient or caregiver growing the 6 plants. And it's not, no,
I'm
a
sure the
business
statute
can't do
addressed it.
that.
The Oklahoma statute
Yeah, they would
addresses
have
that.
to be a commercial grower.
The medical marijuana license will allow a private citizen to grow their own. And so there is an easy way to distinguish that, I
But
think.
we're prohibiting certain uses of that with this overlay.
Yes.
So it could be prohibited if you so chose.
Well, except that is, that's kind of,
Unconstitutional? No?
I would think that we could have some problems with that, and the problem that we're having is not I know of no patient that is causing problems down, there are not that many people in the ETS that even have homes. And it's just 6 plants. And I think, I don't even know how prevalent that is. I don't know how many caregivers / patients, but we haven't had a problem with that. It's been, I believe why we're doing this is because downtown is walkable, and people would buy their medicine and then possibly, go to the, pavilion on the county courthouse and light up. So this doesn't stop that, but it does stop people walking and then getting their medicine and wandering around with it. I mean, we're containing the commercial dispensaries to places where you would drive and go home, is the idea of this.
Is this the most restrictive you believe this can be written in the context of utilization of those substances in the downtown overlay?
Well, this is, what we're doing is we're talking, the ETS is for commercial uses. It would be an entirely different ordinance if we were going to talk about banning, restricting people from their residence. And I think that's pretty, they have a right to that, and I don't think that we can stop them. But having people, I think most of the people are doing that vaporing and the edibles. Because if they're smoking and passing their medicine to other people, then they're going to be arrested by the police department. We have that already. So we can't have, 15 people sitting we shouldn't, at the courthouse, on the steps, smoking marijuana and passing it back and forth.
Commissioner, we do believe this is a reasonable approach to, something that, we've heard from parts of the downtown community that there's some concerns about the activities, but this doesn't prohibit it, but it does kind of put the brakes on any new uses that would be coming into the ETS area. So we think it's a reasonable first step, and depending on how this works, if we need to come back and have a further discussion about other restrictions, we will, but this is a good first step.
They can't smoke in the dispensary. They're not supposed to partake of their substances, their medicine, in the dispensary. And
that's why they take it in public in front of the businesses downtown.
okay, but the police can stop that if they're sharing their medicine. And I think most of the people that are arrested do not have a marijuana license.
Carol, do the public smoking ordinances that we have apply to smoking marijuana as well as tobacco?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you
And
can't
vaping.
smoke in certain areas.
Yeah.
Sidewalks may not be one of them, but parks, for instance, you can't smoke in the parks, right?
Well, we have the Saragusa exception for tobacco, but that was not extended to marijuana. So you could smoke in parks
Okay.
if you're by yourself and you're just smoking tobacco.
But if at one of the current dispensaries downtown, somebody's outside smoking marijuana on the sidewalk, you're saying the police can address that? Or only if they're sharing it with people?
Yes, only if they're sharing it.
And the sharer does not have a card.
And the sheriff does not have a
I
card.
see, yes.
So that's,
Well, that's a lot of conditions, isn't it?
you say no.
The purpose of the ordinance is really to prevent more dispensaries downtown, to be quite frank.
Yeah.
There's already at least 2 or 3. There's plenty of places in the city to get your medicine.
And the reason
Suggesting
why.
that downtown, we don't need any more dispensaries for people to come get their medicine.
And the argument about the commercial grower and processor is that since it's a destination spot and no one can go in to a commercial grower or processor, it's just for employees only, that it would be better in the downtown ETS to have businesses where people would go in and, like restaurants or fun venues than something where, you know, you don't even have customers.
I don't really have a question, I just have a comment. I know that this was one of the OML targeted bills that I believe was passed, because the state wanted to empower municipalities to take advantage of that, and I don't remember who said it, but there was a comment made about family-friendly downtown, and yeah, I absolutely applaud you guys for things like that. If we're done, I'd like to make a motion.
If there's,
Do you have anybody who wants
is
to-
there,
Yeah.
is there anybody signed up to speak, or do we have anybody else that, any other questions or anything?
Haven't spoken in a while.
Apparently,
No one's doing
they're
anything.
here on another item.
Okay. Okay, so you've made a motion to.
I would like to make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. I have a second from Greg. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? There are none. Okay. Item number 3.3 zoning, hold a public hearing on an ordinance amending the Enid Municipal Code 2014, Title 11, Chapter 1, entitled Purpose, Interpretation, Definitions to amend Section 1117 definitions to clarify the definitions of a commercial medical marijuana grow facility, to specify the grow facility must be an F-Series building, Chapter 5A Agricultural General District, Section 1152, permitted uses to remove commercial medical marijuana grow facility, Chapter 7 Commercial Districts, Article B, C1 Light Commercial District, Section 117B-2 District Use Requirements to prohibit commercial medical marijuana grow facility, Article D, C-3 General Commercial District, Section 11-7D-2 District Use Requirements to prohibit commercial medical marijuana grow facility and expressly provide for medical marijuana dispensaries. Chapter 8, Industrial Districts, Article A, I-1 Planned Industrial Park District, Section 11-8A-5, permitted uses to allow commercial medical marijuana grow facility. Article B, I-2 Industrial Light District, Section 11-8B-3, permitted uses to allow commercial medical marijuana processor, and make a recommendation to the mayor and board of commissioners. Alex, maybe make sense of all that for me.
Thank you. I'll try not to repeat it all. The ordinance, draft ordinance before you, before I start, there is a revised version of the draft ordinance that's in front of you. The key change to that is the definition of commercial medical marijuana grow facility. We've added some language, well, the city attorney's added some language that we agree on, that it's, an F occupancy really is a factory group. It's a type of occupancy that we're proposing that these medical marijuana grow facilities be limited to, in addition to being within a permanently enclosed building. The F occupancy type buildings, and we got a couple of pictures that we can pull up to give you a sense of what they are, but they have enhanced HVAC, mechanical ventilation, air control systems. They're typically climate controlled, and the view here is to do this on an industrial scale requires at minimum an F or a factory type occupancy, along with all the systems that you see that you typically find with the various buildings that are pictured here. In addition to that, the proposed text amendment really cleans up the code in a sense in that it removes commercial medical marijuana grow facilities as a use permitted by right in the agriculture zone, the C1 light commercial, and the C3 general commercial. Currently, though that use is permitted by right in the following zones, it's going to remove that as a use permitted by right. It does add medical marijuana dispensary as a use permitted by right in the C3 general commercial district, and it does add commercial medical marijuana grow facilities as a use permitted by right in the industrial zone in our I-1 and other I zones. Staff believes that if you're going to grow it on a commercial scale, it really does belong in the industrial zones here in the city, and it doesn't preclude opportunities. We have plenty of I zones in the city. We're applying a more strict standard as it relates to the F occupancy. And then also, we're saying that the grow facilities and processors be uses located within an enclosed building. So as I stated before with the other ordinance, this is presented tonight for your review and consideration and would go on to the mayor and board of commissioners on July 6th. If adopted by them, it would go into effect within 30 days of adoption. And this is really a text amendment that we see is necessary to bring, some more sensible regulations to this activity in the city. For purposes of just information, the stats we have on facilities that within the city limits of Enid is 23 dispensaries, 18 growers, 7 processors, and 1 transporter. So there's quite a bit of activity within the city of Enid, and we don't believe that a grow on a commercial scale belongs in our lighter commercial zones. That's staff's opinion. We do recommend that you consider recommending adoption of this draft ordinance after any questions in public hearing.
I do have 2 questions. On the occupancy, let me back up here. On the dispensary, nope, not the dispensary. Is there any extraction going on in any of these facilities?
So that would be the processing side of it.
Okay.
So we're just discussing the grow facilities on this.
Okay, just that. Okay, well, that gets rid of 1. What would be, I guess, the harm in just making it a strict use by review process regardless of the zoning?
Good question, Commissioner. We do believe that with these controls, which we think are reasonable, that, again, as I said, we're proposing that we're not outlawing them, we're just limiting them to the industrial zones, which are more appropriate for this type of activity on a commercial scale. And that's a better level of control than an individual use by review, in our opinion, because we're limiting it to a factory-style building in an industrial zone, and that still creates plenty of opportunities. We do think that if that turns out not to be enough control, we could certainly come back and have a discussion with you to make it a use by review in the I zones, but at this point, we think this goes pretty far in restricting what's within the city limits.
Will staff still get the opportunity to do site plan review and all that, even if it's a new facility being set up?
When that review is triggered, yes, there are certain parameters when site plan review is triggered, but yes, we would have that opportunity if it's a new building or a substantial expansion of an existing building. But if it's slotting in with tenant improvements, that wouldn't be subject to site plan review.
But in a use by review, it would be?
It potentially, but as I said, we're recommending these controls first, and if it looks like it's going to become an issue, we'll come back to you and say, hey, in addition to this, let's make it a use by review. But we think this is a huge step forward, especially with the factory occupancy type buildings. That gets rid of the hoop houses and all the other type greenhouses type structures that we're seeing and that we're trying to prevent against.
Okay.
One question I would have, and certainly having a more robust improvement to perform these activities in is necessary, because we've seen some of the facilities around our county have not withstood our weather even. And so I do have kind of a question maybe for Carol. In regard to the agricultural zoned property, we're not growing corn or cattle or wheat, but this is still technically considered, it's a crop. It's handled under, I guess, USDA.
No.
No, it's not.
USDA
Okay.
does not recognize marijuana.
It's,
So it's a stretch to call this agriculture.
Well,
Even though
it's-
it is plants.
We're growing plants, and so
Yes, okay, and here's what convinced me that perhaps, we've had some experience where people have attempted to grow it like you would grow, in the commercial aspect, you would grow it in hoop houses and things like that, and it doesn't withstand the wind, and a simple fence might, we've had some unsightly deals, but what convinced me was I'm in ag, and quite a bit of ag does not have the water necessary to, a lot of, in reading these books, a lot of it doesn't even have dirt. They're using water and, and they have it in different levels. And it would be very expensive on ag to bring in the sewer, the water, the hard surface roads to make sure that the fire departments can get there. On these ones that have, different levels and lots of electricity being used, most of our ag does not have that kind of infrastructure present. So that's why I thought, 5 acres, it wouldn't look very ag-ish if you, additionally, there's requirements about tracking each plant from seed to market, and, you need computers. I really think that it is more of a factory business process. But I suppose we could do use by review in if we wanted to keep it allowed under agriculture, we would need to, we could do a use by review and see if they have the water and the hard surface roads. You'd also need more hydrants than you normally would have. So, if you're on 24 acres and you've got it in one spot, how are the fire department, in a 4-level building? But
And those are the same, and that's the same criteria that we see with a lot of different projects in the city and the county.
And they could always rezone it if they wanted to, but we could leave it ag and say use by review, and then you all would see it and you could talk to them about, where's the building located, where's the closest fire hydrant, are you going to hard surface your road all the way to the building?
Well, I agree with Brian. The use by review, in my view, it's something that has caused, and we have this eyesore east of town right now. If we've been educated once, why don't we keep all of these facilities in use by review so that at least some public entity will see it? I think that was that was commercial zoned agriculture. I wasn't here at the meeting. The flag was waving. Why would someone elect to go back to agriculture? But that didn't come forward. But to me, we all see that and we're reminded of it daily. And it's an image that we don't want going forward. Seems to me use by review, it certainly doesn't offend me. It's a function of commerce that needs to be controlled as I view it. But that's only my opinion.
Well, prohibiting it in ag is stronger than a use by review.
Yeah, if this ordinance was in place, that facility would not have been allowed under this ordinance, I believe, because part of it was
I
agriculture.
think all of that enterprise should be used by review, in my personal opinion.
So just
Well-
remove the by right completely?
Well, in heavy industrial, if you're gonna have a facility, to me, it doesn't, if you're in an industrial park with water and all of the facilities, that seems like it is a logical place. But,
And as I said, the F occupancy really does set a standard for the type of building and occupancy that we would expect these to occur. And Scott may correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the occupancy after that is an H, which is a hazardous occupancy, which you would see with chemical manufacturing and things. So it's pretty strict, the way we're proposing it.
and we're not allowing any growing outside.
Right.
My whole thing was, could we leave agriculture in, but have them meet the standard? Where we don't have, say, yes, you can grow in I-2 and ag, but you still have to meet the standard. We can't just have you out there with hoop houses you have to have an F-type facility, you have to have proper fire mitigation, you have to have proper this and that, you have to have access.
Instead of that, I would rather you make them rezone that area. Instead of having them come and ask for a variance, that's what you're kind of saying. Have them come and rezone it to commercial or see through what we're asking.
Kind of getting about to the same.
You're gonna try to get to the same point, and this takes care of that.
Well, they apparently flew one past us on this East Enid project. Use by review prevents that from happening in the future.
So would the agriculture zoning. It can't, like you said earlier, it got zoned ag and they can't exist in that right now.
Staff would deny it now with this ordinance. Use by review comes to you guys.
Right, that's what I'm saying. At least enough public input to maybe have a perspective.
What we're suggesting is that in the ordinance, it would be stopped. And so what you're suggesting, I believe if we added agriculture, then they would have had to build an F1 building out there.
They would have had to
Maybe that
have
would have
an
been
F1
preferable.
building, they would have had to have had proper
Yeah, and and
access.
I'm not sure it was
They would have
I2.
had
It
to have
was
proper fire
actually-
mitigation.
With I-2.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
So.
whether you consider it a crop or not, you're still growing something as opposed to bolting or welding or.
We're clearly
Something,
trying to
yeah.
regulate this in a way
Yeah.
that we think that the city wants to do that, which starts with this board and the city commission.
And I understand your thought about use by review for agriculture. And I understand that you're saying use by, but for industrial spot, I mean, what we're trying to do is say, go industrial.
Yes.
You know, go to the right spot.
We're enabling an opportunity if the industry will exist by going to the I-2 area for that purpose.
I-2
Well, it
or
would still-
I-3, yeah,
Use
but,
by review, though, would still enable it. It would just be, it would come to you guys, and you guys are the determining body on use by reviews.
but, yes. So we could do use by review for all three.
So we could, and we could still see applicants come to us and say, here's this property we want to grow, we want to zone it to I-2.
Yeah,
Well, the rezoning option is still there, obviously. It's always going to be there.
Well, on page 23, at the bottom of page 23, these are things that are used by review uses now.
Ton of use by review stuff, yeah.
And if you look at it, it's,
it's 20.
you can't have a commercial greenhouse or garden supply shop, ceramic, car wash.
On, those are C1 light commercial.
Only in C1, but right.
Yeah, we're not, but that's,
What is,
we're not talking about, I guess what I'm trying, on that one, we have prohibited, commercial medical marijuana grow
right,
facilities.
right.
Right.
And it should be taken out. But
It's been taken out. I think, and all we've done is we've added in commercial medical grow facility or processor in industrial. It would have been allowed before because we weren't regulating these, we weren't specifying where they go. Initially, the thought was, you can do what you can make whatever recommendations you wish. We had fulsome discussion about how to do it, and but make your
I think this one's a
recommendations.
good start. We can always come back and add those other caveats if we so need to do that.
The only piece that's still standing out to me is in, you guys went with occupancy F, which I think that fits in most things, but when I asked about the extraction portion, you said that that was the only, and I'm sorry, I always get my terms mixed up. Which one is it?
For what?
In which,
Oh, the processors.
in the processing. And she just said that processing was included in that was C3 and industrial. Is that correct?
No.
It's not, it's just commercial grow.
It's just industrial.
Okay, because when you said that, automatically I went, well, that's high hazard, so I'm like, the F goes away.
Correct, and by
Yeah.
the building codes and everything, a processor would be required, that F1 occupancy.
Yeah.
So they're gonna be under that anyways. The grow has a little bit of verbiage where you can do a greenhouse if you don't have electrical and all that stuff in it. And that's what we're looking at here, is making sure that that is under that F1 occupancy.
Okay.
As stated by the fire marshal also. State fire marshal.
But it won't be in commercial.
Okay,
And if you don't make a suggestion, it wouldn't be in agriculture. But you could make a recommendation about use by review.
I'm just looking for clarification on some things, because I wonder about OMMA's rules. I haven't read them, so, you know, how do they feel about
They,
growing on the edge of town versus growing in an industrial area, and, you know, are they, you know, what do we run into down the road?
OMMA heavily relies on the city to police themselves. They are just a licensing agency.
OMMA can't answer their own questions.
Correct.
County commissioners, do you have any
That's it.
input on that, Clarence?
Commissioners, before you go on, I was reminded that in the industrial zone, site plan review is not required. So I misspoke on that, just to clarify. So, but again, the ordinance as we're proposing it, we think establishes some reasonable controls and doesn't preclude the industry from, you know, opening up in the city, but it just, we're saying this is where we think it's most appropriate, and these are the terms and conditions under which we think it's most appropriate. Because as Carol said, on an industrial scale, you're going to see specialized ventilation, climate control. Some of these are hydroponics, so they've got water that they use and recycle. It's all about processing on that scale.
Well, while I'd like to see a little bit more control, I'm gonna trust staff, because you guys are looking at this far more often here than anybody sitting up here is. And with that, I want to make a motion to approve this as written.
I have a motion to approve from Brian.
I would second, but I think we ought to ask if there's any
Right.
public
Is
discussion.
there any public?
Sorry, I did that
Yeah,
again.
is there any public, nobody signed up to,
Yes.
okay,
Good?
okay. Okay. So I've got a motion
Second.
and I've got a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There are none. Okay.
And as a reminder, when this gets to the mayor and board of commissioners, we will let them know about the good discussion here and some of the thoughts here, and make sure that they're aware of the feedback that you've given us, so.
Yeah,
It's not
I
gonna
don't
get
think we
lost.
want to punish anybody that's following the rules. We just want to make sure that people are following.
they've already
where we're going
seen
with
the
that.
ETS ordinance, but Thursday, they'll be looking at the commercial grow processor and the, removing it from commercial and ag, Tuesday night.
And at that time, we'll share with them what the
Now,
initial
that's
comments
just
were.
in study session, so it,
Right.
both of them come back in July.
July
At the first
6th.
meeting.
Right.
Okay. All right, next item, 4.1, plats. Consider approval of final plat for Stonebridge Second Edition, located on Stonebridge Village Drive. Alex?
Yes, Commissioners, this is a request for approval of a final plat, which was originally approved in, I believe, November and December of 2021 by the MAPC and the Mayor and Board of Commissioners, which allowed for the creation of 45 lots. Per the engineer, Mr. Burdick, who is present this evening, the on and off-site improvements are now completed, and the final plat is consistent with the one originally reviewed and approved by the board on December 7th of 2021. It's also consistent with the zoning standards set forth in the R2 planned unit development, and the Mylars are ready for signature should the MAPC recommend approval of this final plat. That concludes my presentation. Be more than happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Any comments? Anybody signed up to speak? I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion to approve from Dawn.
Second.
A second from Brian. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. Now we need to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I've got 20 motions to approval. Clarence and David, I guess. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you all.